Yeah, so you know what you said there about some things happen and some evils can happen where it can bring out a greater glory for God. So has anyone, have you ever heard discussed about why doesn't God, since He controls like who gets life, so He knows who's going to live. So has you heard anyone talk about why doesn't God actually control that process like before people are born, in order to just make the world like a perfect place? Because He could.
Okay.
But there's obviously a reason He doesn't.
Yeah, because the idea was that out of two human beings would come the entire human race, and they would be perfect, and a perfect planet and a perfect universe. And eventually, we would go on to the next life, not in a painful way, but in a way, we would say it like the Virgin Mary did when she was assumed bodily into heaven at the end of her life. That's how we would envision it would have been for all human beings. However, because of the first parent sinning, then the original sin passes through generation, by way of generation, from one person to another, down the centuries. And God is not going to intervene with a miracle in each moment prior to conception to make the person perfect or whatever, or just let the good ones be born.
Okay, so what would you say, or what is the reason why He wouldn't do that intervention? Because there's nothing like wrong with Him doing that if you think about it.
Because it would be saying He's going to nullify the effect of original sin. But His approach was to say, so that to our first parents, that there's going to be conflict between them and the serpent, for example. And they're going to have a hard life outside of the garden. So it is the fate of man now to suffer. But what Jesus did was to repair the broken relationship between us and God, but not to repair the physical universe, nor to repair the physical nature of man. That reparation will come, but that's after the millennium. That's in the new heavens and the new earth. For those who were alive, at that moment.
So I suppose.
And of course, we'll have our renewed bodies when the general resurrection happens at the end of time.
So I suppose the next one is that I remember an atheist asked me this one, is that why did God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, since He knew that they were going to sin with it? So there's two things He could have done. Either the tree of knowledge of good and evil just wasn't there, or He could have made it a bit more, defended it a bit more, but rather than leaving it completely free, so that so when they were going to actually, even like when Eve was looking at it, there's no kind of deterrent there. So the deterrent isn't there to put her off from going to it. So the only deterrent that existed was just what God said.
Okay. I was actually rereading a Catholic mystic who I follow called Maria Valtorta.
I've seen it.
And she was saying Jesus is commenting on Genesis and this issue. In fact, one of my latest videos actually about that. And he calls it a symbolical tree. Now, it may be a real tree, but it symbolizes something. Okay. A tree itself doesn't matter, right? A tree, wherever fruit is got, doesn't matter. It's just fruit. It's just a tree. But the importance of this the importance in this scenario of the Garden of Eden with the tree in there, is that we, as human beings, always have this option. We can reach out and choose knowledge contrary to what God wants us to have. So by having the tree there accessible, it completes the symbol, the metaphor, if I can put it that way. Because if it were outside, if it were not accessible, say it was a fence around it, or angels guarding it, or it wasn't even in the garden, then it wouldn't be fulfilling its role as to symbolize that we have this option to obey God or to disobey God. And to obey Him is to just simply say, right, hands off this, going this far. But to disobey Him is to say, well, there's this option of me getting knowledge that He doesn't want me to have. And that's why the tree must be right there for the human being to go to and to be seduced by Satan to disobey God to access what it has. And what that knowledge he has, in the particular thing I was reading, of Jesus to Maria Valtorta was this, that it was the particular knowledge was the knowledge of procreation. So the first sin is disobedience. But that knowledge would have been, if you disobey God, you'll be seeking this knowledge about what was to be for God alone. That we would reproduce as human beings, not with lust, as we do now, but there would be a kind of more holy way of reproducing, but the human race would reproduce. But this point about the tree, though, just on the tree, yeah, it's there and accessible because that's the fulfillment of the symbol that choosing against God is a choice we can freely make immediately if we want.
Because I suppose just thinking about that, the other thing that I thought is that you could have left it accessible, but you said about having a fence around it or put it somewhere inaccessible. But then the other option would have been just to make it look a bit slimy or put spikes on it, but it's still accessible.
Yeah.
But when you look at what Eve said,
it was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that's the thing.
So further, the symbol is this: it is things that are sinful are often really, really attractive. Why vast numbers of us males are on the pornography sites? Why in the old days was Soho a booming business for strip clubs? It's not like people say, "Oh, I really don't like that sort of thing, but I'll go anyway because I must go once a week." No, it was like they're compelled to go, right? It's the inclination sin, concupiscence, as we say. But forgetting individual sins, the desire to disobey God for something which we know we should not be seeking is a desire to disobey Him because that thing is intrinsically attractive. It is attractive to go outside of God's rules. If anybody sets you rules, there's a desire to go outside them. Now, if you make it unattractive, the symbol begins to break down because intrinsically disobedience is attractive. From childhood, right?
I think I see what you're saying. What you're saying is that He made the tree that way because He wanted it to match the how do you say it? Because
the reality that we experience in desiring disobedience.
Yeah. So he made it match it because of that reason, not because for a specific thing or because He was being mean or anything like that.
But also remember, it's like the tree was symbolising a power, at least some kind of power, knowledge, whatever.
Yeah.
That God said, there's this thing that you could have. Physically, you are able to have it, but I don't want you to have it.
Yeah.
And so that was meant that man was understanding that by obeying God, he's restricting himself.
Yeah.
And none of us wants to restrict ourselves. We intrinsically want to have everything, if we can. And so that's why it's made to look lovely, the tree.
Yeah.
Because wanting the thing over there that we're told we shouldn't have, and we can give it 1,000 good reasons for not having it, but it's still very, very attractive because it's something that we could have that we don't have. Until we've got everything, we won't be fully content. And God sees that in man, but the difference between Adam and Eve and us is that we're now really fallen. Adam and Eve could see the sense of this. They saw, oh yeah, so God we know, God is trustworthy, He's made us, He's everything to us, it's fine. So He says something, that's fine, we'll obey. And Adam was not disobeying. It's his wife that went and disobeyed, and then she convinces, basically, through a silver tongue, she convinces him, as she's been convinced by the serpent.